With your NCC tabbing guide, you would have received a packet that looks something like this. Basically has all of your NCC tabs in it. As part of that particular package, you would have received a page which has markings across the top and across the side. We're going to use that today as part of the exercise of tabbing up the NCC. The NCC is quite involved, so we did come up with a little bit of a way to make this a little bit easier to navigate, and there's something that you can put over an A4 NCC. There's different parts of, or different components or books of NCC that you can have. There's one in a folder version, something along the lines of this one here, or it doesn't need to be a binded folder version as long as it's an A4 NCC, which are readily available as well. The smaller NCCs you could potentially overlay this on, but the actual sizing of the tabs is designed to work in conjunction with the size of the height and the width of the NCC as well. And as you'll see by the markings on this piece of paper, we're actually going to mark out the edges of our NCC so that you can readily find where to put the tabs on. So the first part of this is just to get some markings on the edges of the NCC. You don't necessarily need to do this, but it makes it easier to try and place the tabs all the way down the sides and all the way across the top. So in order to do that, if you've got one combo square or any sort of a set square, basically if you place that first page of lines on the first page of your NCC, if you're in a binder, you can put it in a binder, or you can just slip it into the front page of the NCC. It's a matter of just making sure that all the edges are lined up as neatly as you can, and you can set your combo square to the height. And if you just run a pencil line up each particular line of that guide, it's just going to make life a little bit easier for you when we start positioning these tabs. So we've completed across the side, and as you can see we have some markings running across the side there. We're going to do the same for the top because the tabbing guide is designed to have tabs that are run across the top as well as down the side. Okay, so that just gives us some guidelines across the top as well. Again, not critical, but as you see when we go through tabbing up the NCC, it just makes life a little bit easier. So once we've got those in there, we can take that out. And we're basically starting from the beginning. Now if you open up your NCC tabbing guide, there'll be several pages. And the way this is laid out, they're designed to be punch-out tabs. The first one we're going to put in is the contents. They just punch out, and they've got a sticky, removable sticky pad across the back. Okay, so this is essentially a finished product. This is what we're looking for once we've finished. So you can see we've got an index system down the side, contents part 1, 2 and 3, and then we've got indexing systems across the top. And then once we've got those in place, it's really up to you as far as how many tabs that you choose to put down the side of each of the different chapters. There's also a system towards the back as far as the schedules and definitions, which is another component of the NCC. So you'll see we have the list of schedules, and this is a guide to the definitions as well. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea of where we're going. Now, how many tabs you do and don't put on this is entirely up to yourself. We're going to cover off doing the basics of the contents across the top and the side, and then these specific tabs that you put down the edge here, it's really up to yourself as to which ones you want to put on. So the first thing to do is grab, we're going to start with the contents tab. We're going to grab the contents tab, peel the backing off it, and we're just going to place it right up the top. And again, there's a white line, so you can basically line the edge up, and we're going to line this one right up to the top. Now when we get onto different parts of the tabs, we're going to look at the marks on the edges, but that one's fairly straightforward as far as where that one needs to live. The next one we're going to take a look at is part 1, so governing requirements. and it's a matter of turning over to Governing Requirements page. Now, the markings don't correspond to the larger tabs, so one of the easy ways to do this is just to line the pages back up, make sure you've got that available, and then just, as a guide, line up where that needs to go, because ideally we want to have them sort of sitting one under each other. So that gives us part 1, and then part 2 is going to be the next one. And we'll turn to part 2 page. So this is part 2 here. So we're going to be in this space here. And again, I'm just going to flip this over to line the pages up. Just dropping them in there as a guide. And that gives us our part 2. And similarly for part 3. Part 3 is on page 79. There we go. And again, we're just going to line this up. And as a starting point, we end up with the contents, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Okay, so that gives us our starting space. The next section we're going to take a look at, as you can see, we've done contents part 1, 2 and 3. The next section we're going to take a look at, tabbing up, is going to be towards the back of the book, and it's going to be our schedules and definitions. So schedules across the top and definitions and alphabetical order across the side. That's what we're going to take a look at next. So if you take out your definitions tab, and turn through to the definitions page, which is going to be Schedule 3, 494 in this case. So you notice that we've got the definitions page over on this side, however we keep the tabs running down the right hand side, so we're going to just place this over there, lining up the white line with the outside edge of the page. Now, one thing that you will notice on the finished product is that we keep the definitions tab here. When we put our other tabs in, we always start one tab up, so that we've always got the definitions available to us down the bottom there. And then it's just a matter of going through and working through all of the different parts of the definitions. We've got the letters of the alphabet we'd put on each page, and then we've also got the different definitions that we're going to put on each page. Going to go with the letter A. And you'll also notice too with the definitions, just to compact things a little bit, what we've done is rather than having the full tab of the definitions available, we just sort of split them in half there to make it quite an easy tabbing guide up the top. And then we're using this space down here for the majority of the definitions. So the next letter we have is C. And then E. G. It's up to you. You may choose to use all of the letters, or you might just like to put a couple in. And the idea of the tabbing guide is that this is really just a guide only. How many tabs you use and which tabs you use is entirely up to your own preference. What we've done is we've sort of made available most, if not all, of the tabs that we require, and then it's up to you exactly how many of those tabs you choose to use. You might also find that you come across a slightly different order that works for you. Okay, so that's the end of the alphabet, and as you can see, it's the beginning of our definition section. So we've got our definitions tab down the bottom, and then we've got our alphabet tabs up the top. Now, as I said, you can choose to use those, or you might not feel it's necessary to put those in. The next thing we're going to take a look at is actually some of the different definitions. So we're going to start at the bottom in this case, and work our way up the top. As you'll see, working from the bottom back makes it a little bit easier to put the tabs in. So low rainfall intensity area. Basically we're just looking up for low rainfall intensity area, which is going to be on this page here. Now, as I mentioned to you before, we're not going to go all the way down to the bottom. We're going to start one up so that we've got our definitions tab. So if you turn this page over, we want to start one up from that. And this is where, if you've got the markings on the side, potentially you'd be able to use the markings on the side of the camera, of the book. So if we turn this on the side, and we know that we're coming one tab in, we're going to be in that space there. Now, once you've got the first one up, when you're working from the bottom up, it's actually quite easy once you've got the first one in place, because our next one is going to be freeboard. So we're just going to be working backwards to freeboard, which is here, and then it is a matter of just making sure your pages are lined up. You can pull this tab off and then just line it up with the bottom section of the tab that's already in place. Just worth keeping a bit of an eye on the sides just to make sure that you're still within the lines there. Next one is flood hazard level. Again, it's just lining the pages up and sticking the tab on so that it lines up with the bottom of the last tab. Flood hazard area. Now, we may sometimes end up with more than one tab on the one page, that's okay. And climate zone. So here we have climate zone. Okay, so that takes care of just some of the common definitions. So if we take a look at the setup, we now have, if we were looking for any particular definitions in the NCC, we've got our definitions tab down the bottom, which we can readily access. And once we get to the definitions tab, you can have a look at some of the key definitions that we need to be aware of. Now you can add some more of your own in. You notice that we've got some other definitions there that we could potentially place along here. So once you've got this system in place, you can really manage this however you want to. The next one we're going to take a look at is the schedule tabs. So we want to put the schedule tabs across the top here. And again, I'm going to do this in reverse order. As you saw, once we get the first tab in place, when we work backwards and you're turning the pages in the reverse order, it's easy to line things up. So the first one we're going to put on is the list of amendments. So we take a look, list of amendments is on page 596. List of amendments, and we're going to start this on the far top right hand side. and then we're just going to keep working our way back. You can start at this end and work forward, but when you have the tabs in place, it's a lot easier. Okay, so history of amendments, and it just works one tab back. Just make sure your pages line up. Schedule 7, fire safety verification methods is next. Schedule 6, fire hazard properties. Schedule 3, definitions. Now, you'll notice that we've already got the definitions tabbed up, but it is part of the schedule, so definitions is one that we need readily accessible, so we've created a tab down there, but being part of the schedules, it is part of the scheduled index, so we do have a reference up the top here as well. Schedule 2, abbreviations and symbols. And Schedule 1, state and territory appendixes. And if you wanted to create your own schedule for your state, you could actually have one there for your particular state before we actually put the generic one in. So we've got, in this particular case, we've got Victoria. And then we're going to go to the beginning of Schedule 1. Okay, so that creates basically the list of schedules as well. So as you can see, we're starting to put the index structure around the NCC just to make it fairly easy to navigate. We've got the parts and the contents, we've got definitions fairly accessible, and we've also got the different schedules which are fairly accessible. The next section we're going to take a look at is going to be the different components of each particular part. So part 1 has an index schedule, part 2 has an index schedule, and part 3 also has an index schedule which will run across the top. Now we're going to start with part 3, which are our coloured tabs across here, and again we're going to start with number 12 and work our way all the way through. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 13 spaces that we need to match up across the top here. And you'll notice that we've laid this out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we should be able to get all 13 neatly across the top. And again, I'm going to start in reverse order because when we put the back tabs in first, we can then just follow our way across. So I'm going to start with number 12, energy efficiency. And then just continue to work our way through. Number 11 is next, structural design manuals. And you'll see if you turn the book around and you wanted to just make sure that you're on track as far as lining up to make sure that we're going to get all these tabs in, you can just have a little bit of a look at your reference points. Okay, as you can see, once we've finished tabbing part 3, we can see all of the tabs running across the front of the top there, and it's very easily accessible, chapters 1 through to 12. The next one we're going to do is part 2 and also part 1, and again we're going to do it in reverse order so that we put the tabs up the top right hand side and work our way across. So part 2.7, starting over on the far right hand side. And working our way back through again in the same way, 2.6 and all the way until you get down to 2.1. So we've just finished putting all of the tabs across the top for part 2, and that should take you to about halfway along the page. Now again, if you were to turn your book around and just have a look to check that you're marrying in with your markers on there, it just means that we're going to be able to fit all these in across the top, because as you see, when we start with part 1, we're going to take the last one of part 1, which is section A6, and we're actually going to put that next to where we finished off the last tab for part 2. So this is the start of A6, and if we've lined them up okay, we'll be able to go A6, A5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that should take us all the way across the top of the book there. And they have been specifically designed so that they fit across the top of an A4 page. So we have section A5, A4. Now we're going to obviously put A3 next to it because we've got 2 pages next to each other. Okay, so once we've finished that, what we see is we've basically got part 1 across the top left, part 2 across the top right, and part 3 all the way across the top. And that essentially provides the framework or the index framework for being able to navigate your NCC. The next part we're going to have a look at is we're going to have a look at specifically how we tab each of the individual chapters to part 3. There's 2 different ways of doing this. Some of the chapters have a lot of tabs in it in which we need to actually create a sub-index at the top, and some of the chapters only have a few tabs to which we don't need to create a sub-index. So for example, if we take something like health and amenity, all of the health and amenity tabs basically fit down the side of the page, so we don't need any sub-indexes up the top. So you can see we've got about 7 or 8 tabs which fit neatly down the side of the page. If we turn to a section such as roofing, because there's so much information in the roofing section, you'll see that we have a series of sub-tabs at the top, and then we've got the detailed tabs down the bottom. So at any given time we could turn to section, they're the tabs for 3.51, they're the tabs for 3.52, the tabs for 3.53, and so forth. So what we're going to take a look at now, 3.54, we're going to take a look at how we'd go up about tabbing a section that doesn't have any sub-tabs, and we're going to have a look at tabbing a section that does have sub-tabs. So the section we'll take a look at for our tabbing on the sides is going to be safe movement and access. So we don't have any sub-tabs at the top of safe movement and access. We've just got a number of tabs which we're going to start from the bottom and we're going to work all the way up. So the first one we've got is protectionable openings of other windows. And as you'll see, we're not going to start right down the bottom here. We're going to start 1 tab up, just so that we've always got the definitions tab available. Now again, this is where it's your own preference. You may choose to do this slightly differently, but we've found that it does work best if we leave the definitions tab open. And it is just a matter of working your way through the tabs for this particular section. Next one is protection of an open bore bedroom window. And it's a matter of just lining the tab up to the last one that we've done. So you've really got a couple of guides as to where the tabs go. You can continue to just keep a bit of an eye on your markings on the side there, just to make sure that they are lining up. And also you can just keep an eye on lining the tabs up underneath each other. Once we've put all the tabs in for one particular section, safe movement and access, you can see this is the finished product. You end up with a tab up the top and also the tabs down the side. Now this is assumed that we can fit all the tabs in a small section across the side here. We're now going to look at one of the chapters where we need the subsections up the top because we've got too many tabs to be able to fit in the side. And we're going to take a look at the roofing and wall cladding section. So you'll notice on the tabbing guide with your roofing and wall cladding section there's quite a number of different tabs, and if we tried to just line them all up down this side of the page then we wouldn't be able to fit them all in. Now they will sit on top of each other, but if we overlay a sub-tabbing guide on the top of it or a sub-chapter guide, again it just gives us a little bit more of an easier access point. And we're going to start with, again in reverse order, 355, 354, 353, 352, 351. And this is where potentially you can take a little bit of a look at your markings on the side. So we're going to have a look at 3.5.5, and if you wanted to you could turn the book around just to see where number 5 is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we know that we need to put that 1 in this particular space here. And then it's just going to be a matter of working backwards. .5.2, and if you've followed the lines and lined them up underneath each other, we should neatly fit up the top for the last one. There we go, 3.5.1. So that gives us, because this is such a detailed section, that gives us a sub-tabbing guide. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into each section. We're going to start with 3.55. And we're going to be then just following the same system that we use for our individual tabbing system. Now 3.5.5 doesn't have anything extra to it, so we're going to move over to 3.5.4 and we're going to start with the sections there. So we've got parapet cappings. Now we're going to be coming one up, so that again we keep our definitions tab free, and again it's your choice on how you do this. And we're going to be continuing on. Now you'll notice that some of these will come part way up, some of them will come up a little bit further, but the idea is that we've separated it into a sub index up here, and this is essentially where all of our informational tabs are down the bottom there. So this brings us to the end of that subsection 3.5.4, and we've worked our way from the bottom up, and then we're just going to repeat the process now for 3.5.3, 3.5.2 and 3.5.1, starting at the bottom and then working our way up in reverse order. Okay, so as you can see, once we've finished a section that has the sub-tabs at the top and the informational tabs down the bottom, it becomes fairly easy to navigate quite a few tabs. So we've got section 1 tabs, we've got section 3.2 tabs, we've got section 3.3 tabs, and section 3.4 tabs. And you can imagine if they were all sitting over the top of each other without a sub-index up the top, it'd be a little bit difficult to navigate. Once we've followed that system all the way through, this is what the finished product looked like. And essentially you have basically created yourself an index system and a tabbing system for the NCC. At its very high level, we've got part 1, which is part 1 and the subsections of part 1. We've got part 2 and the subsections of part 2. And then we've got part 3 and the subsections of part 3. So that breaks the NCC down into its 3 main parts. We tend to focus quite a lot on part 3. So part 3 is then broken down into its different chapters. So if we have, this is section 3.0, just with 1 tab there. Section 3.1 with all of their tabs. Section 3.2, as you can see, has been broken up into sub-tabs again. And we've also got the different tabs for each of the sub-tabs as well. There's 3.22, 3.23, and 3.24, and 3.25. Now it's entirely up to you how many of these tabs down the side you want to put on, is entirely up to you. The system is designed around having the basic functionality of the different parts and the different indexes up the top, and then really it's about identifying what you may or may not want to tab up on the side. As you can see, there's quite a number of tabs involved there, and you might just choose to put the tabs in that you have trouble identifying, or you might choose to tab the whole book up. It's really quite customizable to the way that you want to adapt it to your learning system and your navigation of the NCC.